Husband wants me gone, lied to the other woman about our divorce, and now she unknowingly walked into our tangled mess. So what's up, everyone? Maybe this is exactly the spark I needed, something to finally justify my anger at him. We never even discussed opening up the marriage until March 17, so whichever way I look at it, he's been cheating on me this entire time. He lied to the girl, telling her he was already divorced, and I'm still clinging to the hope that maybe she didn't know, that maybe she's a girl's girl and wouldn't do this knowingly. But I can't be sure. Maybe she's in too deep and will choose to stay. He's never shared anything about her, not her name, nothing. I tried looking for any trace of her, but he uses no social media, just Line like most people here in Japan, and that's his only channel for communicating these days. He even changed all his passwords without me realizing. It makes my stomach drop thinking about how I never even tried to unlock his phone, even though I once knew all his passwords. I was so sure he'd never cheat. Well, joke's on me now. All those trust issues I thought he helped me heal? They're back worse than ever, honestly. I can't believe my guard was down for so long. His reason for it all? Apparently I put too much pressure on him. He wants to be free. He said he admired his older brother after a night out drinking with him. He came home and said he wanted a divorce. He wants the kind of freedom that comes with having zero responsibilities, no thoughts about anyone else, no husband duties, no obligation to help around the house, no pressure to cook, all of it erased. Even though I always cook when I can, he wants out of that role entirely. I asked him to clean properly, and somehow, that's pressure too. I normally only ask him on his days off because I know he's tired from work, but so am I. There are days when I can't keep up on my own. Isn't it normal to ask your partner to vacuum or wash the laundry properly? I scrub the bathroom, the shower, even the drain stuff he hates because it's too much of a hassle. I just do it because I know he won't, or he'll do it so poorly I'll have to redo it anyway. That's what weaponized incompetence looks like. Anything he helps with ends up being my responsibility again. And whenever I remind him to do it right, he gets so annoyed. I still did it, what's the problem? He asks. Well, the problem is you can't expect a gold star for half-assing everything. He claims he feels pressured by all these things. But honestly, I'm not someone who spends a lot, or asks for much. The only time I splurge is for his birthday or special occasions. For his last birthday, I put in so much effort, booked a museum date because we both love museums, invited his parents because I know how much he misses them, bought a gorgeous cake, and treated him to an all-you-can-eat FIV Wagyu yakiniku dinner to top it all off. I wanted it to be special. But he just seemed irritated the entire time at other customers, at people taking pictures in the restaurant, just generally annoyed. The day I planned so carefully ended up feeling like a complete disaster. I left that night feeling absolutely terrible. All I wanted was that same energy on my special day. I didn't even expect a grand gesture, just something planned, or even something simple from the heart. He did book an amusement park and a reservation at a shabu-shabu place I'd been craving, but then he wanted to cancel because the forecast said it would rain. I agreed, thinking he'd come up with something else. But he didn't. He didn't do anything, not even an effort as small as cooking my favorite meal. That's all it would have taken to make me smile, just an ounce of effort. But I got nothing. Apparently even that was me pressuring him. Then there was last February. I had surgery to remove pre-cancerous cells from my cervix. 2 weeks later, at work, I started bleeding out profusely. My surgical wound had reopened. I was carrying heavy luggage at the hotel, and suddenly I was drenched in blood. The doctor said if I'd arrived any later, I could have lost consciousness from blood loss. I messaged him to say I had to go to the hospital. He was off work that day, so I asked if he could pick me up. I wasn't expecting a limo ride, I just needed someone by my side so I didn't have to commute home bleeding and dizzy. Even my doctor advised me to wait for someone. But he said he didn't want to go out. It was early evening, about 6:30 a.m. or 7 p.m. To be fair, he hates going out at night because he wakes up at 5:30 a.m. for his shift and needs his rest. Most of our dates are scheduled for mornings for that reason. I've always compromised on that, even though night dates are my favorite. Still, this was different. I really thought he'd worry enough to come and meet me at the hospital. But he refused. I told him how dangerous it would be for me to try getting home by myself, but it was like he didn't care. So I went home alone, train ride plus a 7-minute walk, bleeding heavily. For a married couple, shouldn't picking your wife up when she's in distress be the obvious thing to do? Maybe my expectations were too high. When I pointed out that most people would rush to their partner's side, even without being asked, he just said, "Oh, that's a husband's duty. I didn't know." 3 days ago, he finally admitted that back then, he was just thinking, then go find a husband who would do that for you. Of course, he didn't tell me that at the time. Hearing it now just adds to the pain. My friends, had they been in Japan, would have come for me midnight, far away, whatever. They'd show up. But him? He was concerned with his rest. He says everything I expect of him: cleaning, picking me up in an emergency, putting real thought into a special day is pressure. To him, basic decency is too much of a burden. And yet whenever we fight, he brings up the times he's lent me money as if that's the only measure of love there is. He doesn't cheat, he says, and he's helped me with money when I needed it, my school tuition, my surgery. He says not every man would help so easily. We don't even share a bank account, our finances are separate. But yes, he did help pay for my 2-year junior associate's course in business and marketing when my savings fell short. Even though I was juggling work and studies, it just wasn't enough to cover all the expenses. I live in Japan, and from the very beginning, my husband and I have kept our finances separate, his idea, not mine. He was adamant about never having a joint account. Even when it comes to groceries, the rule is simple: whoever goes shopping pays for whatever's needed. Everything else, rent, electricity, water, gets split right down the middle, 50/50. That was non-negotiable for him, and though it felt a little strange at first, I agreed. I've always treasured special occasions, wanting to celebrate them on the actual day. Never before or after. Luckily, we both have jobs that let us choose 3 random days off each month, so it's not so difficult to take time off for dates that matter. The only ones I really ask for are our anniversary and our birthdays. He always says Christmas and New Year are too busy, which I can't accept. I figured as long as we preserve the days that matter most, we can manage the rest. We also promised each other we'd make time to travel together, short trips, nothing too ambitious. Just 3 days and 2 nights in winter and summer, maybe even just 2 days and 1 night, just so we can relax and actually see each other outside of work. But even these simple trips started to feel like a heavy obligation for him. I love traveling, but our destinations are always within easy reach by train: no planes, no boats, no ferries. He put his foot down about that early on, so I adapted. For the places I truly want to see, I go with my friends instead, leaving him out of those adventures. I'm a huge fan of concerts, but he's not. Even when it comes to bands we both enjoy, like One OK Rock, he complains if I try to get us tickets. I'm in their fan club, which makes it somewhat easy for me to get us seats, but he said it felt like I was forcing him to go. Eventually, I stopped inviting him and just went alone. I thought it would be okay. I always come home with a giant smile and stories buzzing in my head, but even that started to weigh on him. Like somehow, my joy and independence were burdens he couldn't bear. We always agreed on one thing: neither of us wanted kids. For me, that's rooted in the pain and trauma I grew up with. For a brief moment, though, I wondered if he secretly did want children but couldn't tell me. So I asked him directly. His answer stung: he just wants to be alone. He wants relief from what he calls the pressure. I asked him if our relationship could be salvaged. Was there any way for us to fix things? He said rebuilding wasn't his priority. When I pressed him what was his priority, he reminded me of something I'd once said in the heat of an argument. I told him that he'd never find someone who would love him as deeply as I do, that no other girl would love him like this. Those words haunted him, and made him wonder if it was true. Before me, he'd only dated one other person right after high school, a relationship that lasted only a month because she cheated. After that, it had only ever been me. He admitted, almost apologetically, that he'd never experienced falling in love with someone else. He had nothing to compare what we had to. And now, standing in the middle of the home we built together, he told me outright he wanted to find out. He knew it was cruel to say this after we'd married, but that's what was important to him now. He didn't want to be the guy who cheated, so instead, he came to me and asked for a divorce. His words weren't verbatim, we spoke in Japanese, but his meaning was clear. His priority is to discover if someone else can love him, or if he can love someone else. And I'm left wondering, if he finds nothing out there, would he really come back to me to say I was right all along? He says he needs to explore, to try loving someone else, not just for physical reasons but to find someone who fits him better. If it doesn't work out, he says he'll come back, apologize, and try to repair our marriage if I even want him back. In the end, I felt like I didn't really have a choice. On March 17, I agreed to open our marriage. The plan? Keep it open for a year so he can chase whatever it is he thinks he's missing. After that, we decide, divorce or try to fix us. Right now, as I sit here listening to Tiny Pieces by One OK Rock, the tears just keep coming. And honestly, I can't even describe what I'm feeling. I'm lost. Am I numb? Completely shattered. Disappointed, angry, hurt? I don't know. I just desperately wish I could wake up and find this was all a terrible dream. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. My brain wouldn't shut up, so I stopped waiting for it to be kind and just got up and did things. Tuesday morning I went to the ward office. That fluorescent lit, hum of the printer's place where everyone speaks in soft voices and the air smells like paper and antiseptic. I took a number, sat under a cracked poster about disaster kits, and told a woman in a navy vest that I wanted to submit a non-acceptance of divorce. She didn't flinch. She handed me a pen and a form and explained, very gently, that it would block any surprise Rick and Todok from going through without my knowledge. I signed it with my own seal, the one I bought for bank stuff, the same dumb little red circle that marked all our firsts. I asked about property and pensions while I was there. My voice kept catching on words and learned more than I wanted to about Nenkin division and how you have to file within 2 years. I walked out with pamphlets in a clear folder, like homework I didn't ask for. A few hours later, something stupid clicked in my head. He changed his passwords, yes, but there was that old iPad mini we used for Netflix sometimes, the one that lived in the drawer by the couch with dead batteries and the sound stuck at 40%. I found it right where dusk goes to die, plugged it in, waited for the little green snake of a battery to crawl to life, and the line icon opened without asking me for anything. I stared at the chat list for a long time, like it would blink and fix itself, and then I tapped the top one. Her name wasn't her name. He saved her as K-chan with a pink heart. He told her he was divorced. He set a picture of his ringless hand on a calf table, that sliver of pale skin where the band used to be like a cigarette burn. He told her my ex is still moving her stuff out in February. He called me an ex in February. I read until my eyes stung. She asked him if he was sure he was okay. She sounded sweet. Normal. 20-something, probably, because she wrote about everything and put little sparkles at the end of sentences. There was a sticker of a rabbit hugging a pillow. My stomach dropped when I hit the day my wound reopened in February. That day, he took a picture of Yakiniku with her at 8:03 a.m. Captions like finally got to try this place. I printed everything as 7-Eleven net print, 20 yen a page, and my hands were shaking the whole time, trying not to let the clerk see. I messaged her. Not from his account. I sent a calm, stupidly polite message from mine in Japanese that read like a letter to a stranger because that's what it was, asking to meet for coffee near the station. She replied within 5 minutes, "Who are you?" I told her. She sent a full minute of dots, then, "He told me you were divorced. We met at a doubter by the east exit, sitting across from each other at one of those chest-high tables that make you feel like a child." She wore a beige coat and a white mask she kept tucking under her chin because her hands wouldn't stop fidgeting. When she took it off to drink, I realized she had the softest face, eyes already red. She brought her own proofs, screenshots where he called me his crazy ex who won't let go and said I didn't want kids so we were fundamentally incompatible, like he was reciting an elevator pitch. He told her he still lived in the same apartment for logistical reasons, and she nodded along because why wouldn't she if she didn't know better? She'd asked if we had ever shared an account. I laughed and said we didn't even share dish soap. She asked me if I ever brought him to that yakitori place on the corner after the crossing. I said no. He brought her there. They had a table they called the lucky table. Her lipstick left a pale ring on the paper cup as she whispered, "I didn't know." She apologized to me, over and over. I believed her. We didn't plot, or hiss, or tear each other apart like in dramas. We sat like two women in a fluorescent dream holding a man's lies in our hands. She told me she was 24 and worked at a nail salon in the next ward. He told her my surgery was a routine thing, that we were amicable. She said, I asked him if it was okay to be together so soon, and then she wiped at her eyes with the back of her wrist and said, he didn't even flinch. I asked her one question that hurt to hear come out of my mouth, did he ever bring you to our home? She froze. She shook her head and then nodded, then shook again. I went to his place once, she said carefully. A different place? I pressed. She blinked and described our couch. Our rug. The stupid ukiyo-e print by the TV that I bought in a Sakusa because I thought it would be funny to pretend to be cultured. He told her I had already moved out and left old things behind. She thought my slippers were his mom's because they were pink and near the jenkin. My coffee mug with a chip on the handle was something from his college days. I don't know how I didn't throw up on the spot. I held the cup so hard my fingers went numb. When I got home, I put his toothbrush in a plastic bag and sat at the load table waiting for him. He came in at 11:20 a.m. like he had a train schedule in his body, untied his shoes like he was auditioning for a role called Innocent Man, and went stiff when he saw the iPad on the table. I moved the 7-Eleven prints one by one in front of him. He didn't touch them. He didn't read. He just watched my hands. Then he said, so quietly I almost thought I made it up, so you've decided to pressure me again. I asked if he brought her here. He said, it was late and train stop. I asked if the couch was comfortable for them. He said, don't be dramatic. I asked him if his brother was proud. He said, don't drag my family into this. So I told him I had coffee with a girl who wouldn't have touched him if she'd known he still had a wife, and his jaw did that locked thing that makes his temples move. He said I had no right to message people in his life. I told him he lost that privacy when he lied to 2 women at once under the same roof. He told me he wanted freedom and I was making it hard. I told him freedom without consequences is childhood. He tried to turn it into a negotiation about our agreement, about the 1-year open thing, like it was a cell phone plan we could tweak, like I'd be reasonable and shift the terms while he took my home for a spin. That snapped something in me in a way crying hadn't. I told him the open marriage was dead the second he crossed our threshold with someone else in my slippers. I told him I submitted a non-acceptance at the ward office and he wouldn't be able to sneak a divorce into our mailbox while I was at work. I told him I was moving out by the end of the month because I refused to fight him for air in the same rooms anymore. He slept at his brother's that night. The next morning, his mom called me from a number I didn't recognize and asked to see me. We met at a kiss-in that smells like burnt coffee and old cigarettes. She bowed so low her earrings almost touched the table and apologized for how her son was raised, like parenting is a math test with one wrong answer that breaks the whole grade. She told me his brother's marriage fell apart because he did the same thing, sold freedom to himself like it was a discount lifestyle. She pressed a pack of Yatsuhashi into my hands for sweetness and told me I deserved love that shows up at the hospital. I cried into my melon soda while the owner pretended not to notice and turned the old baseball game up louder. I spent my next day off looking at apartments. A tiny one near the JR line with a window that steals light from the building next door and a balcony barely wide enough for a drying rack. The real estate agent talked fast and gentle, like he was trying to lull me into not noticing the water stains on the ceiling. No reikin, zero campaign, just key exchange and a guarantor company. I stood in the middle of the room and pictured my entire life inside those 6 tatami, and instead of panicking, I felt the weirdest little click of relief. I signed. I went to Nitori and bought a cheap futon and a kettle. I carried the kettle on the train like it was a trophy for winning at breathing. He came by that night to get clothes. He stood in the doorway, like I was contagious, and asked if I wanted to set rules for the separation. I told him the only rule was no more lies under my roof. I told him I knew about the yakitori, about the Love Hotel receipts I found in his jacket pocket when he threw it on the back of the chair and the stamp card half full with a cat mascot giving a thumbs up. He had the decency to look stupid for a second. Then he said I was looking for drama and that everything could have been handled peacefully if I hadn't made it public to a stranger. I told him the only thing I made public was the truth to the only other person he let drown. I moved the first load of my things out today. It was raining just enough to bead on the box lids and make my fingers slip. I walked up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was being serviced, past a door where someone was playing One OK Rock softly enough that I couldn't place the song. I put my new kettle on the counter of my new kitchen, which is really just a sink and 2 burners pretending to be a kitchen, and sat on the floor in the echo of my own breath. I wanted to break. I wanted to scream. Instead I boiled water, made instant miso soup, and listened to the kettle click off like it was a heartbeat calm enough for me to borrow. I don't know if I'm brave. I don't know if I'm anything other than awake now. But I do know that when I closed my new door and locked it, it sounded like a beginning. And for the first time in a week, I wasn't praying to wake up from a dream. I was praying to stay awake enough not to walk back into one. The morning after I slept on the floor and called that silence a beginning, I woke up to the sound of my neighbor's alarm going off through the wall, 3 cycles of a polite marimba tone and then a soft curse in a man's voice. I boiled water again, ate a conveni egg sandwich that tasted like damp paper and mayo hope, and stood in the rectangle of sun that the buildings across from me let me borrow for exactly 12 minutes. My phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize that started with a ward code. The woman on the other end introduced herself in that customer service comm and asked if I had a minute. You know that split second where your stomach drops before your brain catches up? She said they'd received a rikentadok with my name and stamp on it that morning and wanted to confirm because there was a non-acceptance noted on file. I took the train back to the fluorescent hum place, like I live there now. The same cracked disaster poster. The same antiseptic air that dries your throat out. She slid the form toward me without touching my fingers, its edges crisp and loud. There was my name, my current surname, and a red circle that looked almost like my seal except that the bottom of the kanji was a little too square, like someone pressed down too hard trying to make it official. He'd even filled in the tiny boxes for witnesses with names I didn't recognize, and under reason he checked mutual agreement. My lungs did the hitch thing where it feels like you're swallowing your own heartbeat. The clerk kept her voice low as she said they could accept it because of the non-acceptance I filed, and that I could visit the Koban if I wanted to consult about forgery. I signed a small receipt acknowledging I'd seen it. The clear folder they put the photocopy in felt heavier than it should have. The Koban was 3 streets down, next to a shuttered flower shop with a chalkboard sign still advertising hydrangeas like summer hadn't ended. 2 officers were inside, one doing Sudoku with a pencil, the other filling out a form so carefully the ink looked like it was laying itself down to sleep. They gave me a consultation number and wrote my name in a box with all the room in the world like I was supposed to grow into it. I told them about the form. I told them about the seal that looked like me but wasn't me. I slid the 7-Eleven prints into the light like cards in a bad magic trick. The older officer nodded the way people nod when they see rain clouds expected, unfortunate, not their fault. He explained that a restraining order wasn't something you get by saying please and showing a bruise on your heart, that we'd need a pattern, but that they could call him for a warning if he showed up. He wrote his name on a card and told me to keep it by the door anyway, like a tiny shield. I took a long way home through a Shotengai where old ladies pull trolleys full of cabbage and someone is always selling second-hand yukata for festivals no one has time for. On my way I ducked into a post office to Sendai. The clerk in the red vest took the 3 carbon copies like she was dealing out something sacred. I wrote his full name slow and robotic and the address we both know by muscle memory, the pen heavy, the desk scored with years of angry letters. The words came out flatter than I felt. You are married, here are the dates, here is the hotel stamp card with the cat giving a thumbs up that I hate, stop contacting me for anything that isn't logistics. I sent one to him and one to K-chan that said, as politely as you can when your blood is thudding behind your eyes, that I believe she didn't know but that now she does, and anything after this isn't oops, it's choosing. The clerk stamped the top sheets with a firm red thunk that felt like a door closing. An hour after I stepped back into my 6 tatami world, my phone buzzed with a voice memo from an unknown ID. It was a breath first hers, I think, and then his voice slotted into my apartment like I'd left the TV on in the other room. You're making this difficult, he said to her, a little laugh at the end like a thread unwinding. She's crazy. We already filed. Then her voice, small, she showed me the non-acceptance. His voice again, impatient, the one that comes out when he thinks the waiter did something wrong, then I'll file again. It's just paper. There's a scrape in the recording that I realized later was his ringless hand against a table. Then, clean as a cut, he says, I brought you to my place because it's mine now. She was supposed to be gone. I listened to that line 3 times, my thumb hovering above the little triangle like I was rewinding a bad joke. She texted, I'm sorry. I ended it. Then, a minute later, if you need me to, I'll testify. His mother called again. She had that tone like she'd been crying over something else and just picked up the nearest grief. She asked if she could bring me some towels because moving always eats towels, which is the kind of sentence that makes you want to kneel down on your new vinyl floor and cry thank you into the corners. She showed up at my door with a grocery bag full of white towels soft like clouds, and a Tupperware of Nimono she said was too much for 2 anyway. We sat cross-legged on the floor and folded fabric, the kettle clicking once like it was agreeing with us. She told me his brother had finally confessed what exactly he'd said in that bar that night that sent my husband home with divorce on his tongue. He'd said, it's like taking your tie off after 20 years and never putting it back on, and apparently that metaphor tasted so good they both wanted a bite. She said his brother's wife ex? Not yet? Had hired a lawyer and that the word had turned their line group into a cemetery of read receipts and nothing else. She squeezed my hand and told me she'd say whatever I needed her to say to whomever asked, and then she wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist and apologized for making my floor wet. I took the afternoon off work the next day and went to a free legal consultation above a pharmacy that smelled like medicated bath salts. A young lawyer with hair so neat it looked ironed listened while I tried to hand him my life in pieces. He explained like he was explaining how gravity worked, words careful, intercourse matters to the law, love hotel receipts help, and third parties who didn't know you were married are often spared unless they keep going after knowing. I nodded like a dashboard bobblehead, and he made tidy piles of my mess and told me to keep everything, even the parking receipts, even the receipts that are just a string of numbers, even the yes, even that. He asked if I wanted them to handle sending letters. I told him I already had, and he smiled a little, like maybe I'd done one thing right. He came to my new place at 9:40 p.m. That night anyway, because of course he did. The knock had that rhythm people have when they think they deserve an answer. I slid the chain across like a move in a very small play and opened the door just enough to see his jaw, the grain of his stubble, the way his pupils lift when he's looking for a way in. He tried to soften his voice. He told me I was being extreme. He told me we could make this peaceful, that we could set conditions that make sense, that I shouldn't involve outsiders. I said, through the 2 inches of air and chain between us, that a ward clerk and a policeman were not outsiders to a divorce he tried to turn into a magic trick. He asked why I was punishing him. I said, louder so the neighbor could hear it on purpose, that if he didn't leave I would call 110 and mention the attempted forged filing. He flinched for a second like someone had turned a light on his face. He said, "You can't make me a criminal." I said he did that part himself. The chain was cool under my fingers. He left a minute after I took a photo of him in the hallway with my phone held high like I was trying to catch better reception. Small steps back. Shoes untied. The elevator hummed like it was swallowing him on purpose. The next morning I took our rings, the gold that we thought men, always, to a recycle shop tucked under the tracks. The clerk put on yellow gloves and weighed them on a scale that pinged like a game over tone. He asked if I wanted cash or a bank transfer. I took the envelope because I wanted to feel its thickness. On my way out I passed a glass case with gadget toys and a row of old cameras, and I bought a 500 yen disposable on impulse, like I needed proof that light still sticks to things. I used the ring money on a rice cooker from Big Camera with a little song it plays when it's done, like it just did something brave and wants to be applauded. That first night I cooked rice and put a single umeboshi in the center of the bowl like a period at the end of a long, overwrought sentence. I ate it sitting on the floor because I don't have cherry yet and turned on the cheap fan I found. For half off because it's winter, letting it hum by my ankle like a cat. K-chan sent one last message. She said she told her manager she needed 2 days off and then used them to leave her apartment where the sheets still smelled like his cologne. She sent a picture of an empty shelf where she'd lined up their Puricura stickers like trophies. She wrote, "I changed my number." I sat there holding my phone and whispered, "Good," to nobody in particular, and realized the person I was really saying it to was 19-year-old me, 22-year-old me, yesterday me, all the girls in my spine stacked like dominoes who needed someone to say they were allowed to leave. My boss let me switch to morning shifts for a while, told me I could come in late the day I had to go change my address. The city office stamped things with bureaucratic certainty. I wrote my name by itself on the renter's list by the mailboxes in a ballpoint pen that was running out of ink. I listened to one OK Rock through tinny phone speakers while I rolled a futon cover over the mattress like I was dressing a sleeping animal that trusted me. Around 8, someone 2 doors down started practicing piano, hesitant, then sure, and I recognized the shape of Wherever You Are before I could place the name. It made me laugh, a short stupid laugh that turned into a tear just because bodies are weird like that and grief is a comedian with bad timing. When I finally lay down, the new rice cooker light a soft alien glow in the corner, my phone buzzed again with his name. It was a photo of our couch. "Do you want this or should I throw it out?" he wrote, like you can snap a picture of a battlefield and ask if anyone's still using it. I stared at the tiny pixels, at the stupid ukiyo-e print above it that's never going to be funny again, and typed back, "Keep your things. I'm done furnishing your comfort." Then I turned my phone face down and let the dark be dark. Somewhere outside a train screamed into a station and opened its doors and then closed them again and went on. I think I'm doing that too. 2 days into the rice cooker lullaby phase of my life, the building manager called while I was brushing my teeth over a sink that makes everything sound like I'm washing dishes. His voice did the careful, pleasant thing people do when they are about to hand you a hot potato. A man had come by that morning asking for a spare key to 302. Said he was my husband. He was very insistent, the manager added, which in Japan is a whole novella. I swallowed mink foam and told him there was no spare key for him, that the lease is in my name, that if anyone even breathes on a duplicate, he should call me first. He apologized as if he'd misplaced my child and asked if I could come by to sign something for clarity. I put on the jacket that still smells like the old place, walked over, and signed a paper that said in neat blocks, "Do not issue keys without the tenant's consent." He stapled a photocopy of my ID to it like a talisman. When I left, I bought a hot can of corn soup from a vending machine and held it in my hands all the way home like portable courage. At the ward office I sat back down under the same cracked disaster poster and told a new clerk I wanted to cancel my old jitsu and register a new seal. She explained the process in the tone of a bedtime story. "Bring the old one, sign here, stamp here, your new red circle registers today." I slid my cheap wooden hanko across the counter like an old snake skin. She stamped something that made a gravelly sound, then handed me a receipt with a new impression on it. The bottom and my name looked different this time, on purpose. She told me they would not inform the other member of the household about the change. The relief was small and mean and exactly shaped like that square mouth at the bottom of the kanji. Across from the ward office there's a stationery store that sells those revenue stamps for taxes and weird fees and documents nobody warns you will eat your time. I bought a precise amount of yen in stamps that looked like money got shy. I took them 3 stations over to a building with a name that sounds like a hospital until you see the plaque, Family Court. The waiting room is beige in a way that feels like a decision. A woman had a counter handed me a checklist with gentle bullets: application for mediation, revenue stamps, postage stamps, Koski copy. I filled in the boxes with our names and addresses while a toddler somewhere in the building kept dropping and catching something that made a little plastic cluck every time it met the floor. I wrote reason with a hand that didn't shake. I glued stamps like a school project, paid for a Koski copy request to another counter because my name lies on his family register, like a footnote, and folded everything together into a manila envelope that felt heavier than the things inside it. I slid it under the glass, and a clerk said they'd mail both of us a date. Her voice had the rhythm of train announcements: it will arrive, it will arrive, it will arrive. That afternoon at work I was slicing lemons in the tiny prep corner that always smells like bleach and faint citrus when Kenji from front desk stuck his head in and said there was someone in the lobby asking for me. His face had that pinched look he gets when drunk salarymen decide they're philosophers. My stomach did a small, polite roll. I peeked through the crack between the glass doors the way you listen for a storm. He was standing by the hydrangea arrangement, hands in his pockets like he'd lost something under his nails, looking too at home in a place where everyone else is on their best behavior. Our manager knifed between us like a pro. Staff do not meet personal visitors on shift, she said with the power of 1,000 rules gently stacked. He laughed like it was all an embarrassing misunderstanding and tried to angle past her. Security moved in a way I've only seen on TV quietly, certainly, a hand near but not on. I took 3 steps back into the staff court area and dialed the Koban officer's number from the card he gave me. He answered on the second ring like he'd been waiting for the day to give him something to do. "We can make a guidance call," he said, like he was offering to water a plant. 10 minutes later my phone buzzed. He was leaving the lobby with that jaw lock I used to read like weather. He texted, "So you called the police on your husband at your place of work," like the sentence would collapse my lungs. I stared at the word husband until it stopped looking like anything and then put the phone face down in my apron pocket. I sliced the rest of the lemons with neat little moons of rind falling in a bright pile and breathed until my hand stopped remembering his key rhythm on our old door. The letter with our first mediation date arrived the next morning in one of those sober cream envelopes that feel like they aren't allowed inside a cheerful mailbox. We were scheduled for a Tuesday, 10:15 am. Room 5. I read it twice at my kitchen counter and then once more sitting on the edge of the bathtub because the acoustics make paper sound too loud there. His mother texted asking if I wanted her to come sit outside with a book like a parent at a recital. I said I'd be okay, then immediately asked if she'd come. She responded with 3 umbrellas and a word. On the way, I stopped at the old apartment to pick up the last box that somehow gets left behind in every move, full of things you can't categorize: 2 mismatched chopsticks, a roll of washi tape, a charger for a device you can't name. He was there. He stood in socks in the Jenkin like a boy, our door propped open with a doorstop I didn't know we owned. There were 3 garbage bags lined up along the wall: burnable, burnable, non-burnable, like he'd seen an infographic about being a functioning adult. He looked tired in that way men perform to avoid apology. "We can still do this without lawyers," he said to the floor. I picked up the box. My chipped mug was inside, wrapped in a dish towel that wasn't mine. I told him the mediation date. He said he wasn't sure he could get the time off, like divorce is the kind of appointment you push behind a haircut. I slid past without looking at the couch. Family Court Room 5 looks like every doctor's office waiting room when you were a kid, except the magazines are stacked with the gravity of government. 2 mediators came in with clipboards and expressions like soft furniture, a retired man who looked like he knew every bus timetable in the city and a woman with a carved jade brooch the size of my thumb knuckle. They sat me and him in separate little rooms off the main room, the sliding doors barely thicker than a calendar. The mediators floated between us like bees. When they were with me, they poured tea. I was too polite not to drink and asked open questions that wanted yes/no answers. Do you wish to divorce? Do you seek damages? Do you want to separate property? I said words that sounded like I borrowed them from a different, braver person: adultery, attempted forgery, contents certified letters, love hotel receipts, damage, apology, no contact outside logistics. I slid the photocopy of the written form he forged across the table like a prop. The jade brooch woman's eyebrows did a small invisible cartwheel. In the other room his voice rose and fell like someone balancing on a curb. We were basically over in February, he said once, loud enough to thread through the wall seams. The retired man came back in and, calmly, like he was noting a bus stop, asked if I had the February receipts. I did. When it was my turn to wait, I watched the dust mote do a slow choreography around the fluorescent light. We didn't resolve anything because of course we didn't, not in an hour carved out by a building that sees 10 versions of this a day. But we put words where silence had been, and someone else wrote those words down in ink that dries permanent. When I stepped out into the corridor, his mother was there with a clear umbrella and two onigiri wrapped in a towel like she'd smuggled me contraband from a kinder planet. We walked to the station without speaking. She touched my elbow lightly at the crosswalk in that way her son never did, like I was a person who occupied space you had to make room for, not a shadow to slip past. That night, back in my 6 tatami Echo, I wrote another letter at my low table with my knees buzzing from the cold vinyl floor. This one went to our old landlord, clear and legally boring, deposit split, move-out condition photos attached, send my portion to the new address, please confirm in writing within 14 days. The post office clerk in a red vest did her solemn little stamp dance across the top copies and I loved her for it in a way that would be weird to say out loud. I ordered a second-hand table off an app from a man who wrote just use 4 plants in his listing, which made me imagine leaves nodding in silent debate above my meals. He delivered it himself on a bicycle with a basket, his pant leg rolled up like somebody's sweet dad. We carried it up the stairs together, shoulder to shoulder, and he left me with an apology for the one scratch I couldn't see. 2 things happened in ridiculous order the next day. First, his brother texted me from a number I didn't have saved, I heard you filed. I'm sorry. Then, hours later, he found me online anyway from a new ID that used a picture of a mountain like anonymity. You ruined my shot at happiness, he wrote, pacing his sentences like a courtroom. You could have let me go quietly. I stared at the words let me go like I was supposed to open a gate I didn't build for him. I didn't write back. 10 minutes later, his mother messaged, please block any number that makes your heart race in a bad way. I did. The block list on my phone is starting to look like a tiny cemetery. K-chan sent me one more thing before going quiet for real. It was a voice memo of him again, recorded at a place that sounded like the inside of a cup, every sound rounded, wet at the edges. She's doing this for money, he was saying to someone. I could hear glasses tapping the table, a grill hissing in the middle. I took care of her. I paid for school. She's cruel. Then a third voice I didn't recognize, amused in a mean way, so marry someone easier next time. The cat stamped card love hotel sigh of a world, right there, fizzing under their voices. The file ended with a scrape and a mutter I couldn't make out. I saved it to a folder named after nothing at all. He tried my door again that night. 3 taps, the way people tap when they're pretending it's casual. I left the chain where it was and asked through the wood what he wanted. Let me in to talk like adults, he said. I told him I'd talk at the family court on the next date, that the only adult in me is the one who loves her door. He huffed. I heard the weight of his body slide down the other side of the door to sit, something he used to do when he wanted to be the saddest blanket in the room. I put on one OK rock low enough that he couldn't hear it and let Taka sing the beginning tinny and distant through my new world. After a few minutes, he stood and went. I watched the peephole as his shape distorted into a fisheye smudge that pulled away down the hall. I took a photo of the time, of the door, of the empty hallway, and sent it to myself like evidence and also like a love letter. The neighbor's piano crept back in 2 doors down around 8, slower than any metronome would allow but steadier than last time. He was working on the middle of the beginning, the part that lifts like a train leaning into speed, hitting the wrong key and then finding the right one by muscle memory he hasn't grown yet. I lay on my futon and stared at the ceiling guy wire someone strung between this building and the one across like we're all holding each other up without knowing it. The rice cooker sang its tiny 4-note victory song in the corner, and I actually laughed, an involuntary bubble sound that shook my ribs. When my retainer contract from the lawyer came, I took it to a conveni to copy and tentatively signed my name in a space with too much room like I was supposed to become bigger to fit it. He'll send a proper demand letter this time, lawyer letterhead heavy with consequence, the kind that doesn't blink. He said we can ask for protection of my address in court filings and that we can request a formal warning call from the police be noted. He said words like timeline and admission and pattern, and I said yes a dozen quiet times like I was climbing stairs. On my way home I passed the Shotingai where a man sells skewers of grilled chicken that make your coat smell happy 4 hours, and I bought 2 I didn't intend to salt. No sauce and ate them leaning against a signpost, the juice burning my fingers. It tasted like something I owe myself. The sky was the color of the back of a spoon. Somewhere a train let out a long, patient exhale as it slid into a station and opened its doors. People stepped in and out. Somewhere, he is doing the same, doors open, doors shut, Steps taken and steps taken back. I held my second skewer and let the grease run down my thumb and thought, for the first time without begging the thought to be true, that my station isn't his anymore. That my stop is my own and has my name on it and hiragana on a little white label, by a mailbox. That I can get off where I want and not apologize for how many bags I'm carrying or how long it takes me to climb the stairs. When I got home, the table that used to hold only plants held my dinner like it had been waiting its whole life for the day somebody needed it. I put the mail in a neat stack, folded the towel his mother left like it was a flag, and stood in my rectangle of sun for the 12 minutes it visits me every morning and every evening through the gap between buildings. I watched us dance and didn't mistake it for magic. I turned my phone face down again and didn't feel scared. The door behind me was closed, not slammed, and the chain lay cool and small against the frame, doing its simple job. Somewhere down the hall, the piano found the right note without fumbling first. I said, out loud to nobody and to every girl I have been stacked inside me, good. Then I washed my hands, made rice and listened to the cooker saying when it was done, a little mechanical brave thing telling me it had finished a job it knew how to do. I like that kind of ending. I like that it comes with steam.